Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Today I am showing you a replay I just recorded in my Chapayev. This game isn't an absolutely amazing game, but I think it's a pretty good showcase of how you need to play this ship and other really fragile cruisers when you're in a situation where you're bottom tier and you need to not die to keep the game going. So right away, you'll notice that my detection goes off, and you'll also notice that I hadn't fired my guns. So I reasoned that whoever was spotting me must be within my detection range and thus within my radar range. So I pop my radar just to try and scare this Fletcher away, and we get some shots into him. It would have been better if I had been able to react a little bit faster, and if my team had been able to react a little faster as well, but we're able to get 7,000 damage done to that Fletcher. And that was really important because that small amount of damage can actually be really important in deciding destroyer fights. So now that Fletcher is at almost 2/3 of his hit points and his engine is damaged, which should give this black a big advantage when he's trying to fight this Fletcher off. Unfortunately, I whiffed my shots, but right now the positioning I'm in on the map is aggressive enough to get shots, but also reasonably passive. I don't really want to like push in too far because that's a Montana, and that's a Moskva and a Seattle, and there's a Grosser Kurfürst also back there who would be in a really good position to shoot me if I tried to be aggressive. The other problem is if I try and push straight in with my bow in and everything, then what'll happen is I'll just get shot when I try and turn around, and trying to disengage from that situation is going to be really hard. If you look at like what ships we have versus what ships they have a Moskva and a Seattle. The Seattle, I believe, is tier 9. So they have a tier 10 and a tier 9 cruiser, along with 2 tier 10 battleships. And we have just 2 Chapayevs and a Republic. And the reality is that we're just not going to win this fight if it comes right down to it. So what we need to be thinking about doing is just thinking about not dying. Their Shimakaze shows up, and things just got a lot hairier. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I want to get damage, and I want to influence this flank, and I want to stop as much as I can. I want to slow down the enemy push from into this flank. So the way I need to do that, basically, is to just sort of kite them away. Right now, I think I probably could be a little bit closer here, actually, but I'm also thinking about long-term, about maybe I'll want to flex over to the other end of the map as well, in case that flank starts to go down. But unfortunately, the black on our team dies, which means we now have just a Khabarovsk and a Z52 on our team on this flank, but they're not really in much of a position to exactly stop the Fletcher and the Shima from being aggressive and spotting out the Chappas and the Republic. So at this point, what I'm thinking about is, okay, they've won the destroyer fight, and I can talk a little bit about why they won it, actually. The big reason they won the destroyer fight is essentially because our cruisers weren't able to get up close and personal and deal with their destroyers, because they had their battleships there zoning us out, and they had the Moskva there zoning us out. Meanwhile, their Moskva and the Seattle were both capable of getting up close and putting themselves in a position to much more directly affect the cruiser fight, just because they were a higher tier. They had more survivability than the Chapayevs did, and because of that, and because their battleships were more aggressive, which is fair, they were able to kill our black. A couple mistakes made here. The big mistake, I think, was our black should have been a lot less aggressive. The reality was that our Republic couldn't necessarily get up close and support him because they have 2 battleships and 2 high-tier cruisers there, and the Chappas couldn't really get up and support him because we're super fragile, and if we fuck up even a little bit, either one of those battleships could very easily delete us. And so that's just not a risk I'm going to want to take. And unfortunately, our black dies because of it. And so that's one of those situations where you really just have to kind of recognize what basically what the situation is, and recognize the strength of their ships versus the strength of your ships, and whether or not you realistically are going to be able to maintain the fight. So right now I'm actually getting a little bit closer, and that's because I kind of want to shoot this Kurfürst over these mountains, but you'll notice as soon as I shoot I get spotted, and that's because this Fletcher is still hanging around here, and that's kind of worrying to me because what that means is that he's in a position to keep us spotted, and it means I can't safely sit behind this island and just pummel these guys with my HE. I have to be really careful. So right now, sorry about that. So right now, I'm just thinking, okay, I want to get shots on these guys, but I also don't want to die. So what I need to do is prevent myself from getting one shot when they pass in between this sort of area here. So you'll notice there's this gap in between these islands, and I'm worried that these battleships are going to pass through here and shoot at me. So what I need to do, or just pass through the other side of here, then I don't know if they're necessarily going to come through this pass, but they're going to be on the other side. They're going to have clear shots at me, and I want to minimize the amount of damage I take when that happens. So I'm making my turn now before that actually happens. If I waited to make my turn until the battleships were already shooting at me, then what would happen is I would just get deleted. So now that I've completed my turn, I shoot and allow myself to be spotted. If I had been shooting that whole time while I was completing that turn, then these battleships would have known I was turning. They might have accelerated to try and get shots at me. And so that's why I held my fire there for a little bit while I was actually completing the turn. So now I'm in a position where I can more safely get shots in on these battleships. They are shooting at me, but I'm able to use the angling of my ship to bounce or minimize the damage that I take. And now that I'm kiting them away, I'm able to have a little more of an impact. So now I'm actually getting shot by the Zhao over here, which is not ideal, and I think I decide to switch my fire over to him for a little bit, unless I decide to go back for these battleships. Yeah, I decide to go after this. What do I decide to do? I think I reason that the Zhao is probably going to go down, which I think is actually, this is a mistake here. I think I should have been shooting at this Zhao. I think my reasoning was twofold. The reasoning I had at the time was, I think the Zhao is probably going to die. I mean, if you look at him, he's on 8,000 hit points. He's not going to live very long if our Zhao is able to get shots into him. So I didn't really think he was going to survive. And the other part of my reasoning was I just kind of wanted to disengage because I didn't want to keep getting shot. You saw that even though I was able to minimize most of the damage I was taking, I'm still now at 2/3 of my hit points. And I wasn't even taking that much fire. So I'm a little bit worried about that situation. So those are the two big reasons I decided to stop shooting. I think it was a mistake. I think I should have been shooting at that Zhao because you'll notice now he's disappeared and he's still alive, which is obviously not good. So right now we're actually up by one ship, but this game is still anybody's game. We have a lot of fragile cruisers on our team. This could really just devolve very rapidly. If our cruisers start making mistakes, getting cocky, getting aggressive, we're going to start dying, and then we're going to start losing the game. So I want to avoid that happening. I don't want to be that guy who gets himself killed and loses the game for his team. I do take some shots at the Zhao there. So now I'm trying to shoot this Kurd first over the mountain. Again, I'm just playing really passively here. And the reason I'm playing passively is because this is a situation where getting ourselves killed is going to result in losing the game. When these games are very close like this is a situation where you want to not take risks and let the enemy make mistakes, especially when you're in a light cruiser like this and you're bottom tier. The reality is that nearly any of those battleships could kill me. And this is another situation where I'm trying to kind of hold my fire. So remember that earlier when I was making that turn by those islands, I waited until I had completed my turn before I actually fired my shot. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to risk getting deleted by the battleships and giving them an easy broadside. Now that I've already turned, what I'm going to do is shoot at them now that I'm able to kite them away and actually give them an angle. Now, it's really important to note that the Musashi could still kill me, but my reasoning is that since I'm at this long range, it'll be harder for him to hit me. And I think he does actually... Yeah, I do take a lot of damage here, which is kind of just something I just have to live with. I need to get shots in on this guy, and so what I'm doing is minimizing the risk that I get killed, which is why I did that turn the way I did. And you saw that even then I've still taken a lot of damage, and that's just the life that you're going to live when you're bottom tier as a light cruiser in this kind of situation. So I've set the Musashi on fire, and I want to put some damage into him. I want to make sure this guy dies because he's an extremely dangerous ship. We're now down 2 ships. So remember what I said earlier about how these kinds of situations are lost when players make mistakes and play too aggressively because they get cocky because they see, oh, we're up 1 ship, I can afford to take risks, and they play aggressive and get themselves killed. That's how these situations get lost. And so I'm trying to avoid that happening for me. And all the while, I'm kind of looking around on my mini-map. So you'll notice I see, first of all, there's an Edinburgh for me to shoot at. I don't know if these shots hit. But the main thing I'm noticing is I'm noticing that their Grosser Kurfürst is actually pushing through this little gap. And that's scary because we just have 3 cruisers here. The Republic is not really being much of a presence here at all. So what we need to do is we need to kill this guy quick because otherwise he's going to delete all of our cruisers and we don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is just farm this guy as he pushes through. I notice I get spotted, and so I pop my radar. This is really important. So this is another one of those situations where the Fletcher is going to duke my shots. So I could have actually killed this guy. I flubbed my first set of shots, and I'm actually going to try and take some shots blind because he's going to disappear. And I am actually able to hit him. I think I should have aimed that further ahead. But anyway, I'm now being shot. So what I'm thinking right now is, alright, they have 2 destroyers here. They have a battleship pushing through the middle. They have a Moskva pushing around there, and there's the Montana still back there that I'm scared of. And so I'm looking at all those things, and I'm thinking, alright, I need to simultaneously stop them from pushing into our base, while at the same time, not killing myself, and putting in damage, and hopefully killing them. And I am a tier 8, and these are almost all tier 10s and 9s. So it's a pretty tall order. But the way I'm going to accomplish it is just by kiting them away, maneuvering at long range, and putting in long range fire into these guys, using my DPM and gradually whittling them down. That's how we're going to win this kind of situation. The Code First takes a torpedo hit, so now's our chance. We start to focus our fire on him. I could be shooting at the Moskva, but I need to make sure this guy dies. Battleship heals at high tier can really save their asses. And I don't want what happened to this guy, to the Musashi, to happen to this guy. You'll notice the Musashi is still alive. My team was actually able to get him to really low health, but he used a heal and recovered almost all of it. I think he's going to do that again a little later. So now I switch my fire to the Moskva. I'm really scared of this Moskva because he can push in and make our day really miserable, especially if our 2 battleships up here die. So we need to make sure this guy gets killed. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to put long-range fire into him, attack him as he's pushing in. I think kiting like this is a really, really strong tactic because it allows you to, and I talk about this in a lot of videos, but it actually allows you to get easy shots into the enemy while minimizing the chance that they're actually able to do damage to you. So right now I'm sort of winning a gunfight with a tier 10 cruiser just because his shots on me are really hard, but my shots on him are pretty easy. So I turn my attention to the Musashi. The reason I'm focusing the Musashi and not the Moskva is basically just because I want to make sure the Musashi dies. Like I said, he's a huge threat, and if that guy's allowed to live, he can really cause some problems for our team. But anyway, the Musashi shots start to get bad, and I notice the Moskva is almost pushing into our cap. So I decide to switch to him. The other reason I decide to switch to Moskva, so 2 reasons. 1, he's almost in our cap circle. 2, I want to help support my Zhao and stop my Zhao from dying by potentially drawing fire away from him from the Moskva, and also just helping him kill the Moskva faster. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just putting shots into the Moskva, and again, I'm just kiting, just like I've done earlier, just like I've done many times on this channel, and like I've done a couple times so far in this game. So I've now actually stopped, and the reason I've stopped is because I don't really feel the need to push up where that Republic and the Lion are, and I want to make my shots in the Moskva a little easier. And just sort of try and draw some fire from the Zhao. Unfortunately, I think the Moskva is doing the right thing. He's focusing on the Zhao, which I think is the correct play in this situation. He needs to get the Zhao dead, so then he can focus on me. And I don't know what that was. You'll notice the Zhao just gives him his full broadside for no reason, which is kind of whack. I shoot AP because I'm hoping the Moskva will turn a little harder, but he doesn't, so I switch back to HE. And now we're just trying to kill this guy. And so, of course, the Zhao goes down, which is not good, because now the Moskva is just going to be shooting me. This is a huge mistake, what I'm doing here. I'm giving him a ton of broadside. I realize my mistake and try and turn off. And he actually, luckily for me, he cocks up his shots. But the reason I'm turning into him right now is I want to get closer. So 2 reasons. First of all, reason number 1 is... Yeah, and that wasn't good. Reason number 1 is I want to kill this Moskva as quickly as possible. And he's almost dead. I want to stop him from using any heals. I get the kill. Reason number 2, I think there's 2 destroyers in our cap right now. And you notice the cap is still being contested, so there is a destroyer in there. That's why I'm worried. That's why I've turned around here instead of just running away from the continuing to kite away from the Moskva, because now we're at a point where I need to be aggressive in order to secure the cap. There is the risk that the destroyers will just kill me by trying to gunfight me, but I think I kind of have to take it, because if I don't, they are going to cap and we are going to lose, and I really don't want that to happen. The other thing to note is you'll notice I've loaded up AP. The reason for that is I want to shoot this Edinburgh, but he starts to turn away, so I decide to shoot at the Fletcher instead. Two reasons for shooting the Fletcher. First of all, I had AP loaded, and the Edinburgh wasn't giving me a good shot. Reason number two, I want to kill the Destroyer. Destroyers are incredibly dangerous, especially in the late game, so getting a kill on a Destroyer late game is really valuable. I switched to HE again because it'll do more damage to a DD. I don't know if any of these hit. No, not quite. And I really want to make sure that Fletcher goes down, but the Fletcher disappears, so I decided to shoot the Edinburgh. Now, you'll notice, here's another thing. You'll notice the Shima has now left the cap. That's pretty important, because it means that I now don't know where he is, which is not good. I've used both of the charges on my radar, and I am still detected. I'm kind of regretting using it earlier now, but I think it was worth it at the time to use earlier, so I'm not really that concerned about it. But regardless, not ideal that I don't have my radar right now. The Fletcher is going to go down, which is great, and there are torps. So this gives me an idea of where the Shima is going. You'll notice that they were spotted coming from over here in this area of the map, which means I think the Shima is going around this way. And so I turn in to try and head him off and to try and avoid any more torps that he's going to be launching my way. So that's actually going to be correct, and the next set of torps is going to come from this direction. Now, I'm not going to play out the rest of this game, and the reason for that is because you'll notice we're now up by one ship. We managed to recover nearly the entire deficit, and I'm not really going to do any more damage this game because most of the rest of the enemy team is just going to die over the rest of the next 2 minutes or so. So I'll just talk a little bit about the major takeaways from this game and why I think it's really important. Like I said, this wasn't an absolutely amazing game, but it was a game where we played a pivotal role in actually helping the team win. Two big reasons. The first big reason was just by not killing ourselves, we were able to stay alive throughout the game and continue to influence it the entire time. We were able to stop the Destroyers from contesting our cap, and we were able to stop the Moskva from pushing into our base. And that's the second big reason why this game is important, is because in addition to showing how important it is to kite away and use defensive tactics when you're bottom tier, it also showed how important it is to just stay alive, because then you can actually use the fact that you're still alive to be able to stop the enemy from pushing into a base. So in this case, if I had died right there at the beginning, we probably would have lost because they would have had a Destroyer and a Moskva in our base capping out, and we'd be sad because we would have lost. Instead, though, I kept myself alive. I didn't take too many risks at the start because I noticed it was a close game. I'm going to need to stay alive if I'm going to want to influence the rest of the game and maybe win. And because of that, I was able to fall back, kite the enemy, defend the cap, and win the game. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you liked the video, go ahead and give me a like or a subscribe. Thanks so much. Hope to see you in the next one.